are listening to the Heartland Author Podcast. I am Aaron Apollo Camp. For today's episode, I had the honor of interviewing Tyler Wittkofsky. Tyler has written novels, short stories, and poems, with some of his books including the novel The Seeds of Love and the poetry collection Coffee, Alcohol, and Heartbreak. Additionally, Tyler is the publisher at Tea with Coffee Media and hosts 2 podcasts. I'm here with Tyler Wittkofsky, who is an author, poet, and podcaster, and his company is called Tea with Coffee Media. Tyler, welcome to the Heartland Author Podcast.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here. Looking forward to a good conversation.
Feel free to introduce yourself to our listeners. I understand you had a medical episode this weekend.
Yeah, I had a little bit of an incident that I ended up in the hospital, so that was fun. Had a fish hook wound up in my hand. But, a little bit about me is I actually live full-time on the road. I travel full-time and document my adventure through Adventure with Coffee. It's a travel blog that me and my wife run. We do craft beer reviews, coffee reviews, campground, attractions, all kinds of stuff. I also blog on my website, tylerwittkofsky.com. I talk a little bit about mental health and marketing and traveling and writing, all kinds of different things. And like you mentioned, Tea with Coffee Media is my baby. It's a publishing company, small independent publishing company that I started in 2022 with a couple of friends, Aaron Jolly, Kelsey Ann Lovelady, and Victoria Moxley, as well as my wife, Grace. We've had a really good run. Everything's going really well with the company. We have about 2 books come out every month starting in 2024. Right now we're at one book a month for the past 2 years. So I'm also an author. I've written about 4 books now. My first one was Not Alone, a novella that detailed my mental health journey. Then I wrote a poetry, like you mentioned, the poetry collection, Coffee, Alcohol, and Heartbreak, which I wrote between 2012 and 2016. It was a dark period of mental health for me. It was whenever I was struggling the most with my mental health because I was unmedicated, and then towards the end of it I was medicated but was bouncing around from medications. I also wrote a romance novel, Sunflower Kisses Book 1, The Seeds of Love. It's the first of a 5-book series, and that's about a mentally ill young man that has that falls in love, and it explores the intricacies of falling in love with mental illness. My most recent book was Enamored Echoes Book 1, Potent, which was a co-authored book by Kelsey Ann Lovelady and myself. It's about a modern-day retelling of A Midsummer Night's Dream by William Shakespeare. We took Oberon and Titania and threw them in the modern world. I've got The Principles, which is inspired by my grandmother, coming out in 2024. Been in several anthologies, written for several blogs and online magazines like Rewritten Realms, The Dark and Veil Universe, and The Mighty.
Now, you answered my first 2 questions there with the one response. Now, you've written 4 books, but have you written some poems and short stories that are not part of any of your books?
Yeah, I've actually got, I write all my poetry on my phone. I just let it go kind of naturally. That's whenever I feel most in my zone. So whenever that inspiration strikes, I'll write down a poem on my phone or post it on Twitter or Facebook or Instagram. I have a whole collection of poems that maybe one day I'll publish into a collection, but as of right now, it's just going to be kind of a fun thing for me to do on the side. Short stories, I'm working on a couple. I'm working on a couple different short stories right now. Not necessarily for any specific anthologies, just because they've been little inspirations that I've had, and I've really kicked it up to writing. I've started a new writing process. I actually started writing 15 minutes a day, Monday through Friday, just to keep that writing going and that flow.
Now, your company is called Tea with Coffee Media, and what services does your company actually provide?
So we're a publishing company. So we sign authors to publishing contracts. So we pay, if we sign an author, we pay for everything, including book cover design, advertising, editing, formatting, all that good stuff. We pay for it for the authors. They get a 65-35 royalty split with them getting 65% of the profits. It's one of the best in the industry right now. So we're really trying to make it all about the authors. But aside from that, we also do offer marketing, book cover, editing, and formatting services to the general public, even if you're not signed by us. And we try to offer it at a very reasonable price. Of course, we've got to pay our editors and we've got to make a little bit of money, but at the end of the day, we're very affordable compared to a lot of other editors and a lot of other book formatters and cover designers. So we try to help everybody that we can, even if they're not part of our family, which is what we call everybody that's part of Tea with Coffee Media. All of our authors, all of our staff, we're all a family. We all treat each other like a family. We check in on each other. It's just a really good environment that we've built.
Now, you host two different podcasts, is that correct?
Yes, I host the Back Porch Parlay podcast, which is a podcast that a friend of mine, Matt, and I started a couple years ago, back in 2019, I believe it was. We've been on a bit of a hiatus since I've been on the road, but we're working on logistics to get back up. But we do like craft beer reviews and have guests and do all kinds of fun things where we're just trying to bring civility back to conversations, because he and I have a lot of different opinions and different beliefs, and we want to make it to where we can take it to the next level and show people that you can have a different belief and still be friends with somebody. My other podcast is the Cook the Books podcast. It is actually through Tea with Coffee Media, hosted by me and my Vice President of Marketing, Kelsey Ann Lovelady. It is very much focused on the publishing industry and writing as a whole. We cover things like world building and writing programs, editing, all kinds of things. And we've just started up season 2. We're really excited about it, and it's going to be a good time. So be on the lookout for season 2. And Back Porch Parlay should be coming back in the next couple months.
Yeah, if someone who was an accountant was the host of a podcast called Cook the Books, that would be a major problem, because cooking the books in the accounting world means committing fraud.
Right.
So I'm glad your podcast is not about that.
Yeah, we try to avoid the fraud aspect. We don't like fraud. It's not exactly good for business or ethical, or we try to be as ethical as possible. So.
Yeah, I just didn't want anybody to get scared when you said one of your podcasts was Cook the Books.
I gotcha. Yeah, it's if whenever you watch the podcast, our opening is actually it's me and my Vice President of Marketing as wizards. It's an animated trailer as wizards, and we're cooking books in a cauldron, and we create this podcast and create, our first episode was what is the perfect recipe for being a writer, and that's kind of where the whole Cook the Books podcast was inspired by, was that very first episode.
Okay.
We recorded that before we ever had a name.
Now, you travel in your recreational vehicle full time, and what do you enjoy the most about traveling in your RV?
I think I love finding small town USA. The place I grew up in, Leland, North Carolina, was small town USA when I was growing up. Everybody knew everybody. You waved at each other. You knew each other's name. And while that's a good thing in a sense, eventually as you grow older, the drama intensifies. And the small town also grew up. It was one of the fastest growing cities in North Carolina. Probably still is, if not the fastest growing. And there's so much development that it's changed from that small town where it's everybody knows everybody to the point where they get along, they smile at you, they wave at you. And that's kind of what we're chasing. We're chasing that small town vibe. We're looking at all these small towns and staying at RV parks in these small towns, at local mom and pop RV parks that aren't owned by big organizations like KOAs or resorts or anything like that. We're trying to find the smaller mom and pops so that way we can support the small businesses and support the people and really get to make these connections. And that's one of my favorite things, is just getting to experience these new experiences, these new connections, this just new environment, and being able to be one with nature again.
Now, how does writing help you cope with your mental health problems?
Writing is definitely a big tool for my mental illness. I think one of the biggest ways that it helps me cope with my mental health is because it gives me an outlet, and it gives me a place where I can get out and tell my story without any issues. Being able to express myself and just free my mind for a minute to create these worlds or to express how I'm feeling, whether it's journaling, whether it's writing or poetry or short stories or novels, whatever it may be. It's a way to free your mind, to free yourself from the confines that have been holding you back.
Now, how do you find equilibrium between your roles as an entrepreneur, author, and traveler while managing your mental health effectively?
Yeah, that's a very good question. I wish I knew the answer to it, but I take it day by day, and I live my life on the edge and have fun while I'm doing it, and try to just enjoy life. I mean, I keep my eyes on the prize. My goal is to one day, where me and my wife, or she's currently working a full-time job, I'm working a daytime job right now. So I want to be able to one day where we can both just focus on the businesses and be able to run our own business and work for ourselves and help all these people between, Tea with Coffee Media and the blogs, and, just being able to inspire people and show people hope and give them some kind of semblance of, what, I will be okay, and be that hand that helps somebody up whenever they're down.
Now, I have one final question. What advice would you give to an aspiring travel writer who is looking to balance his or her love for exploration with his or her passion for writing effectively?
I would say they go hand in hand oftentimes. For me personally, I love being able to take my travel experience and incorporate it into my writing. That's a big thing for me, being able to explore these new opportunities and go to these different lands and these different areas and learn new cultures and be able to create new characters based off of people you meet. Because as a writer, a lot of your inspiration comes from your life, your outside life, people you meet, people you know, celebrities, whatever it may be. You draw inspiration from those people and those experiences and those settings to build. And a lot of my settings originally were in the Deep South because that's where I was from. And now I'm pivoting away from that because I am traveling so much. So embrace these similarities and embrace both of them and let them work together instead of saying, okay, well, I've got to travel now and write later. You know what? Travel, and if you get inspired, write. Write, and if you get inspired to travel, get up and go. Take the time to let them complement one another.
Well, Tyler, you are a wonderful guest for my podcast, and I thank you for appearing on the Heartland Author Podcast.
Absolutely, Aaron. It was a blast, and I'm so glad we got to sit down and have this conversation, especially after the fishing hook snafu a couple days ago. So,
well, I hope you're healing well.
So far, it looks like it's going to heal with maybe a tiny scar, so no big deal.
It's wonderful to be able to interview a fellow multi-genre author and podcaster. This is Aaron Apollo Camp reminding y'all to write your imagination. Bye for now. You can learn more about me and my book writing projects at campaaronapollo.witsite.com/authoraac. You can follow me on Twitter and Facebook at authoraac and on Instagram at aacscribe. Copyright 2023, Aaron Apollo Camp, all rights reserved. This podcast episode is intended for the private listening of our audience. Any reuse or retransmission of this podcast episode without the express written consent of the podcast host is prohibited, except under fair use guidelines. Royalty-free music and sound effects obtained from https://www.zapsplat.com.